Nobody so far, it seems, has asked about the Frank Pavone case. Stick around to find out.
You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Welcome back to Reason and Theology, everyone. Your host, Michael. The PavoneGate Saga continues. Wow, a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of information and misinformation, and people are confused, and a lot of people think that this is a hit against the pro-life movement, and that the Pope is against the pro-life movement, and the Pope is against traditional Catholics, and he hates them, and all kinds of things. Wild speculation is taking place, and I did do a show yesterday touching on some issues related to this matter, and I want to talk a little bit more about it, and also kind of recap some of the things that happened, kind of give a timeline, and then some updates. But first, I want to ask a question that I don't think anybody has asked yet, and I'm amazed the question hasn't been asked. If it has been asked, I haven't seen anybody discuss it, and I've seen a whole lot of discussion about this case. What is that one question? The one question that is on my mind is, well, I'm supposed to have many questions, but one question that I have on my mind is Mr. Pavone says that he's aware of the nuncio in the U.S. who has a letter saying he's been dismissed from the clerical state according to the Supreme decision, which indicates that Pope Francis backed this. More on that in a moment. So he's aware of that, but he says he was never personally notified of this. The question that I have, and that nobody seems to be asking, is why hasn't he simply picked up the phone and called his bishop and asked him, hey, am I in good standing? It's really simple. You just pick up your phone, dial the number. I'm sure it's saved in there. Boom. I imagine he'll pick up pretty quickly and get back to him. And he can tell him if he's in good standing. Any Catholic who is a loyal son of the church, who is a priest, and wants to be in good standing with Christ's church, I think the first thing they would have done as soon as they heard there's some kind of papal decision about me being dismissed, the first thing they would have done is contact their bishop and say, hey, just checking in to make sure that I'm still in good standing with you, right? Because if I'm not in good standing, that's a problem. I shouldn't be presenting myself as a priest, and I want to be a loyal son of the church here. Am I in good standing? How come he hasn't done that? And if he has done that, how come he hasn't disclosed that information and told us the result of that conversation? I think these are questions that need to be asked to Mr. Pavone and that he needs to answer. I think he needs to explain if, in fact, this is the case. He says that he was never contacted. Okay, if that's true, doesn't take long to just dial the phone number of the bishop and ask, hey, am I going to be receiving a letter pretty soon saying I'm dismissed from the clerical state? What's going on here? It's not hard to do. Well, perhaps he can answer that question for us. Now, I want to show y'all the letter from the nuncio, because again, I don't think that he can continue to say he hasn't been notified. Maybe he hasn't been personally notified as he claims. And I keep saying first thing he should do is call his bishop. But he has been notified because he's been made aware of this. This is from the nuncio, Archbishop Pierre, sent to the bishops, dated December 13th. I've been informed by the prefect of the dicastery for the clergy that on the 9th of November 2022, a supreme decision admitting, notice that, supreme decision, admitting of no possibility of appeal. This means that this is the Pope who is backing this up. The Pope is able to say, this person is dismissed from the clerical state, and there is no further appeal after the Pope. Directed that Reverend Frank Pavone be dismissed from the clerical state. As you will know, Father Pavone was a very public and high-profile figure associated with the Right for Life movement in the U.S. His dismissal from the clerical state may therefore be a matter of interest among the faithful. In anticipation of that potential interest, the attached statement regarding Frank Pavone is provided for your information and for release within your diocese, as if you deem appropriate. The attached statement has been approved by the dicastery for the clergy. That's this statement that I'm going to read in a moment. With cordial regards and best wish, I remain yours in Christ, Christopher Pierre, or Christophe Pierre, Apostolic Nuncio. Now, here's one question that I think a lot of people haven't asked. Again, he claims that he hasn't been notified of this directly. Again, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I also want to give his superiors the benefit of the doubt. Now, I can verify this. I have right here the letter. I can't verify his claim that he hasn't received notification. And he could easily pick up the phone and find out for himself. So something about that doesn't add up. But here's my question. Why would they go through all of this trouble? Why would the bishop, dicastery, especially if the bishop is just out to get him and shut him down, wouldn't the bishop be really happy and eager to just hand that letter to Pavone? This is not adding up when he says he hasn't been notified. If they're really out to get him and they're just so eager to shut him down, it's not hard to deliver a letter to somebody. And they've had over a month. Why haven't they done so, according to him? Again, something about this isn't adding up. Now, I want to examine this situation in depth. We're going to go to this article by The Pillar. Priest for Life, a Frank Pavone explainer. What's the deal with Frank Pavone? You've got questions, we've got answers. 14-minute read. It's a decent, I say decent, it's actually a really good article. They did a really good job at condensing a very complex situation into a 14-minute read. I'm going to read this and also offer my commentary. News broke on Saturday that Frank Pavone, the head of pro-life campaign organization and controversial political activist, has been dismissed from the clerical state. A prominent media figure for years, Pavone's laicization has captured media attention in the U.S. and left many wondering if the Vatican decided to dismiss him from the clerical state because of his stridently pro-life activism and his well-known political beliefs. Again, if that were the intention, why haven't they slapped this on his desk? They would have hand-delivered this thing to him. In over a month, they haven't done so. So they go to all this trouble to get Rome and even the Pope to back it up, and nobody can deliver this thing? Really? That doesn't sound right to me. And he's aware of it, but he can't make a simple phone call to his bishop. Some have claimed that Pavone's dismissal came in response to his political activities and prominent pro-life work. One bishop even called it blasphemy. More on that in a moment. So what's going on? The Pillar explains. Frank Pavone is the National Director of Priests for Life, a national pro-life apostolate, which in turn supports Rachel's Vineyard post-abortion healing retreats, manages a publishing division, engages in television production work, and live streams daily masses. Pavone was ordained in 1988, served pro-life leadership positions full-time since 93. Pavone has made headlines in recent years because of his avowedly partisan activism, which included a 2016 video in which he placed the body of a dead baby on a table resembling an altar on which he sometimes offered mass while urging Catholics to vote for Donald Trump. We spoke about that last time, so I won't go into details here. Since 2016, Pavone has posted tweets, Facebook statuses, videos, and other social media postings urging support for the Republican Party, calling into question the validity of the 2020 presidential election and disparaging Democratic lawmakers. Pavone served as a member of the campaign advisory group Catholics for Trump during the election. In 2020 of September, his diocese released a statement disavowing tweets from the priest in which Pavone called the Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden a blank, which I'm actually going to unfortunately show the tweet to you here in a moment, a blank loser, and said the Democratic Party was God-hating and America-hating, and that Biden's supporters can't say a expletive thing in support of their loser candidate without using the word Trump. You can unfortunately see it right here. Why is it that the supporters of this GD loser Biden and his morally corrupt America-hating, God-hating Democratic Party can't say a GD thing in support of their loser candidate without using the word Trump? What do you think you have to say for yourselves, losers? Okay. It said that he apologized for this and went to confession over it. That's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. Great. God's forgiveness is always available to those who are sorry for their sins and make use of the sacrament of reconciliation. That's awesome. But that doesn't take away from temporal consequences and canonical penalties. So some people have said, well, what's the big deal here? He went to confession. Let me give you an analogy. And notice an analogy is an analogy. It's not a, absolute equivocation. An analogy means something that's similar. It's not the exact same thing, because I know some people are going to try to ding me and say, that's not the exact same thing. I understand that. That's why it's called an analogy. So let me give you an analogy. If a priest were to, break his vow of celibacy in a intimate act with someone, and he were truly sorry about it, and he goes to confession, that's wonderful. If he's really sorry, really repentant, and receives absolution, God has forgiven him of his sins, and I'm really glad to hear that. But that doesn't dismiss him from temporal consequences for his sins or even canonical penalties. We even know that just ourselves as laity. Whenever you go to confession, you still have to do a penance. So to say, well, he was sorry for this, that's wonderful. Praise God. Well, he went to confession. Wonderful. Praise God. But this is one of the concerns that his bishop had. If you look here at my screen, I'm going to show you again that accompanying letter that goes along with what the nuncio wrote. Somebody said, well, the thing's not signed. It doesn't need to be signed. It's from the dicastery for the clergy right here, according to the nuncio. Okay. Statement on Frank Pavone. Pavone, the founder, notice it says Reverend Pavone. Some people have said, oh, they're just so disrespectful calling him Mr. Pavone. It does call him Mr. Pavone, but several times it actually calls him Reverend Frank Pavone and Father Pavone here. Reverend Frank Pavone, the founder, it looks like we're getting demoted. At first, it's a Reverend Frank, then it's just a father, and then it's a Mr. as this thing progresses. Reverend Frank Pavone, the founder of his organization, or the founder of the organization Priests for Life Incorporated, was dismissed from the clerical state by the Holy See on November 9th, 2022. This action was taken after Father Pavone was guilty in canonical proceedings of blasphemous communications on social media, and this is one of the instances, and of persistent disobedience of the lawful instruction of his diocesan bishop. Some people say, oh, well, to say GD isn't blasphemy. Yes, it is. And then others have said, okay, well, all right, I guess he did commit blasphemy, hence why he went to confession. But okay, I guess he did blaspheme, but I mean, that's pretty extreme to laicize him. Okay, but it's not just that. It's persistent disobedience of the lawful instructions of his diocesan bishop. And his diocesan bishop has not asked him to do something immoral. And people will come with the constant comeback of, well, if your bishop tells you to murder somebody, you don't have to listen to, right. His bishop never asked him to do something immoral. So that's just not going to work. Father Pavone was given ample opportunity to defend himself in the canonical proceedings, and he was given multiple opportunities to submit himself to the authority of his diocesan bishop, which it seems that he has conceded. It was determined that Father Pavone has no reasonable justification for his actions. Since Priests for Life is not a Catholic organization, Mr. Pavone's continuing role in it as a layperson would be entirely up to the leadership of that organization. So, again, this is just one example of the blasphemy on social media. The article continues. Let me share my screen once more. Let's see here. Originally incarnated in the Archdiocese of New York, the priest transferred his incarnation to the Diocese of Amarillo, Texas in 2005 with plans to begin a religious order. So we went from New York now to Texas. The plan fizzled, and Pavone soon found himself clashing with Amarillo's Bishop Patrick Zurek, who was appointed to lead the diocese 3 years after Pavone arrived there. It goes on. Nevertheless, despite his claims to the contrary, the pillar has confirmed that Pavone remained incarnated in Amarillo until his laicization, which means until November of 2022. He's still been there. I have seen him elsewhere say that no, he was transferred to another diocese. But it seems that that is put into question here by the pillar that has confirmed that he has remained incarnated in Amarillo. The Amarillo Diocese generally does not respond to questions about Pavone's status as a priest, but its 2020 statement noted that Pavone had posted a variety of messages and statements in regards to the general elections in November 2020. The postings on social media as videos concerned the serious sinfulness of voting for candidates of a political party with refusal of absolution if confessed, and the use of scandalous words not becoming of a Catholic priest, the diocese said. Now, he has said in response to this, from what I've seen, in fairness to Mr. Pavone, he has said that he was saying he refuses absolution to people who vote Democrat unless they're truly repentant. Here's my concern with that, though. If somebody comes to you in the confessional and they confess their sins and they read the act of contrition, it's presumed that they are repenting of their sins. So unless you have a really good reason to believe that they're just going through an act and they don't really mean it and they're insincere, unless there's something in the external form that would indicate that, I don't see a good reason to withhold absolution. So it does seem to be problematic to add that qualifier unless you're really repentant. Well, again, it's presumed anybody who comes to confession and they say the act of contrition, one of the reasons why in the Latin Rite they say the act of contrition is to make it apparent in the external form that they are sorry for their sins. So I understand the concerns of the diocese there. I also understand his comeback, but I think that there could be some additional concerns that the diocese had as far as saying that he's going to withhold absolution unless they're repentant. How are you going to determine that they're repentant if they've already offered a confession and have quoted or read the act of contrition? Upon what basis does one still determine that they're not repentant? They would have to do something to indicate, I'm not really sorry for this. So I could certainly see a concern there from the diocese. These postings are not consistent with the Catholic Church teachings. Neither the Catholic Church nor the Diocese of Amarillo condone any of these messages. Please disregard them and pray for Father Pavone, it says. The 2020 incidents were part of a decade-long dispute between Pavone and Bishop Zurek. In 2011, Zurek barred Pavone from priestly ministry outside the diocese and ordered him to return to his diocese and receive a pastoral assignment. I mean, if you're a priest, that's, after all, fair to be given an assignment and obey your priest whenever they say, hey, come and do a ministry. Pavone's response is, well, I'm doing more important work effectively by doing this pro-life stuff. Okay, but you also signed up to be a priest. So maybe you should have considered that before you became a priest. But once you're a priest, there are some responsibilities that come along with it. And I appreciate the fact that Laura Ingram in her interview with him gave him some pushback on that. Pavone did not obey his bishop's orders and was suspended. The priest began a contentious process of appeal of his bishop's suspension and claims that the Vatican lifted his suspension in 2019. Notice it says he claims that the Vatican lifted his suspension. I don't know if there's any indications that the Vatican has or hasn't lifted, other than his comment saying that it has been lifted. Perhaps he could maybe offer some documentation if he hasn't already. I haven't seen it. When Zurek suspended Pavone in 2011, the bishop cited concerns about Pavone's financial management and his disobedience. And I have seen some responses that he offered to that. And I recall that Philip Lawler back in 2011 did have an article going over this. And it does seem that there was some admissions made by Pavone, but I'll let him speak for himself on what those admissions were. But again, maybe read the article by Philip Lawler back in 2011 on this question, where you can read Mr. Pavone and hear it from the horse's mouth. Zurek said he had deep concerns regarding his stewardship of the finances of the Priest for Life organization, which was then generating more than $10 million in donations a year. I don't know what the outcome of this was at the end of the day. Perhaps, and I'm going to assume that there was a good outcome when it comes to the financial aspect. You'll note that the dicastery did not mention that one of the reasons why he's being dismissed is because of financial issues. You'll note that is not one of the things mentioned. So I'm going to assume that that was something that was resolved. Father Pavone has gradually lost his need to show appropriate obedience to his bishop, Zurek wrote at the time. And you know what? That's unfortunately being confirmed by his behavior in reaction to this news. He's made it very clear he's going to continue to do what he does. He is going to continue to present himself as a priest, even though he is aware of the fact that the Vatican has this ruling against him, and he could easily pick up the phone and call his bishop to find out what's what. So when he's being accused of disobedience, you can see where they're coming from, because he's not proving them wrong. He is proving them right. It seems that his fame has caused him to see priestly obedience, the bishop says, as an inconvenience to his unique status and an obstacle to the possible international scope of his ministry. And, I imagine that his priestly functions do in some ways come in the way. They're going to take some of his time away from his pro-life ministry. So I do imagine there is a level of inconvenience there. But when one becomes a priest, they are obligated to carry out those duties. So at that point, it is what it is. In recent years, Pavone has claimed to be in the process of transferring to another undisclosed diocese, so a third diocese, and said he was subject to the authority of the bishop of that undisclosed diocese rather than Zurek. So he was saying he's under that authority. But it goes on to say, in fact, Pavone claimed in 2020 that he had stepped down from his official roles with the Trump campaign because his new bishop had directed him to, but he declined at that time to name the bishop. In April 2020, Pavone's canon lawyer released a statement which claimed that Pavone is a priest in good standing and would be transferring to a new diocese. Pavone has repeatedly said in 2016 he sought a transfer to the Diocese of Colorado Springs, and has claimed that an agreement to make that transfer happen was in 2019 blocked by the Holy See. But sources familiar with Pavone's case confirmed to the Pillar that the transfer never happened. For his part, Bishop James Golka of Colorado Springs said on Monday that he could not confirm Pavone's alleged transfer plans. It goes to quote him, "I regret in the time that elapsed between my arrival in Colorado Springs and Bishop Sheridan's death, I did not have the opportunity to speak with him about many of the things that occurred during his tenure, including this matter," the bishop said. "Therefore, I am unable to comment on Mr. Pavone's assertion other than to say he has never been incardinated in the diocese." Which means he's still part of Texas. So what happened on December 13th, the bishops of the United States were informed that Pavone had been laicized on November 9th in a letter to the U.S. bishops, Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Christophe Pierre, noted that Pavone is a longtime high-profile figure associated with the Right to Life movement, adding that his laicization may therefore be a matter of interest among the faithful. Again, he claims that he was never personally notified. My response to that is pick up the phone and call your bishop and confirm your status with your bishop. It's not hard to do. It takes 5 minutes. I don't understand what the difficulty here is. In light of that potential interest, the nuncio sent to the bishops a brief statement from the Vatican's dicastery for clergy, which said Pavone had been laicized after canonical proceedings, found him guilty of blasphemous communications on social media, and persistent disobedience of lawful instruction from his diocesan bishop, which again, he is just confirming them in. And he continues to confirm with more disrespect on his social media. Notice this, which he promptly took down, praise God. But I want to show this, even though he promptly took this down. I want to show this because it shows his disposition, and that disposition matches up with what I'm saying here. Disobedience. Notice this. Notice what he shares. This is a post by Bishop Richard Ministries, who is an old Catholic bishop, so he's a schismatic bishop who is against the Catholic Church. And he asked the question, which one is a true priest? And he has a picture of Pavone or Pope Francis. And of course, Pavone shares this quickly to, remove it within a matter of a few hours. Good for him. But I think this still needs to be brought to the attention of people because it confirms, and it's public information, and it confirms the reason why he was disciplined. It's unfortunate. The Vatican statement also said that Pavone had been given ample opportunity to defend himself and was given several chances to accept his bishop's authority, but had not done so and had given no reasonable justification for his actions. What does laicization mean? This Pavone is still a priest. Priestly ordination confers an indelible character on the man being ordained. As such, it cannot be undone. Although laicized, Pavone remains a priest, sacramentally speaking. So he's still a priest sacramentally, but he doesn't have the permission to exercise any kind of authority or privileges associated. Those who are laicized lose all the rights and privileges of clerics, including the faculties to say mass, hear confessions, except in danger of death, to receive ministerial assignments, to wear clerical dress, which he continues to do. And again, if he wants to say, well, I continue to do it because nobody has notified me, contact your local bishop. He will let you know if you can continue to wear the clerical collar or not. If you're a loyal son of the church, it's not hard to do that. But if you're not concerned about being a loyal son of the church, then you might just continue to say, hey, I haven't been directly notified. Which again is what he says. I can't confirm that. After a cleric is laicized, he is not automatically free to marry, because some have thought, hey, well, why doesn't he just go and get married? One is not automatically free to do that. Laicized clerics can also be dispensed from the obligation of clerical celibacy, which would make them free to validly contract marriage, but that dispensation is not granted pro forma with dismissal from the clerical state, and it must be specifically granted by the Holy See on request. This is about to say something really important, so hang in there with me. It is not clear if a dispensation from celibacy was given in this case. There are three main ways in which a priest can be laicized. It gives those to you. One of these is actually very important, so let me just go ahead and read the whole thing. The first is by personal petition of the cleric himself to the Holy Father, so like the priest himself asking to be dispensed. The first is by personal petition of the cleric himself to the Holy Father, asking the Pope to release him from the clerical state as a special favor. The second ordinary means by which a priest can be laicized is when he is found guilty of a crime in canon law, which has dismissal from the clerical state attached as a possible penalty. For example, abuse of minors. Such cases are handled by a different Vatican department, the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, which does have the authority to impose the penalty of laicization. And what Father Gerald Murray, a canon lawyer, has said is, well, he hasn't done anything that has a penalty specifically for removal from the clerical state. But that's not the only way that somebody can be laicized. Here's another way that somebody can be laicized. The third means by which a priest can be dismissed is by the application of special faculties granted to the dicastery for clergy by Pope Benedict XVI in 2009. Pope Benedict granted the dicastery, then the Congregation for Clergy, authority to handle cases in which the local bishop petitions to laicize a priest who has either attempted civil marriage with a woman, violated divine or canon law in some special aggravating circumstances. And one of the charges against him is his activity in the campaign violated canon law, or deserted ministry altogether for at least 5 years. Under the second of these three circumstances, bishops can petition for the involuntary laicization of a priest in response to behavior which gravely damages the common good of the church. Did you hear that? Behavior which gravely damages the common good of the church. That might fall under divine law or canon law, but under that, behavior which gravely damages the common good of the church is one reason that the bishop can petition the dicastery to remove him and laicize him, and presents public scandal, but only after they have investigated the matter themselves and tried to admonish and correct the priest, which was done. If corrections and admonitions are ignored or rejected repeatedly, and the bishop sees no other way to deal with the situation, he can appeal to Rome for a priest's laicization. Full stop. The bishop, if he's not getting cooperation from his priest, he can contact Rome to seek that he is laicized if he's done everything he can to resolve the situation. The special faculties constitute what canon law calls extrajudicial process, meaning that while there is still the presentation of a petition, a kind of a canonical indictment in these cases, and the right of legal defense for the priest, there isn't a formal trial before a tribunal of judges. So it doesn't go before any kind of church judges. Instead, the dicastery assesses a petition from the diocese presented by the bishop and makes a decision. If the dicastery finds in favor of the bishop's petition, the final decision to laicize the priest has to be made by the Pope in every case. Full stop. In every case, the Pope has to confirm this. You remember in the letter, it spoke of the supreme decision that allows for no further appeal? That Father Gerald Murray admits that can only be done by the Pope. Well, guess what? In this situation, in every case, the Pope has the sign off on laicizing such a priest. Though this is often a formality, as the Pope usually accepts the dicastery's recommendation. Notice again, because some people are going to say, but wait, why isn't Rome intervening and doing all kinds of other discipline? Well, I'm right there with you. I think that Rome should take more of an active role in disciplining clergymen. I'm right there with you. I wholeheartedly advocate for that. But unfortunately, what Rome has been doing is it has been saying, we're going to tend to let the local bishop try to sort things out unless they contact us. That's not always the case, but we're going to tend to do that. I don't think that that's necessarily a good move right now, because we got a lot of bishops who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's my quibble with Rome and the Pope, respectfully. But that seems to be their approach, and there haven't been petitions from some bishops to laicize certain priests that should, in my opinion, be laicized. Maybe if those cases are brought to Rome, maybe Rome will back them up. But unfortunately, a lot of the bishops aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think that there's some fair criticism that can be offered about the hierarchy there, unfortunately. It goes on. What happened in Pavone's case specifically? Well, sources close to the case have confirmed to the pillar that Bishop Zurek petitioned the dicastery for Pavone's laicization, making use of the dicastery's special faculties. So it's not like Rome is just saying, let me go get Pavone, but I'm not going to go get Father Martin. That's not what's going on here. The bishop has brought this to the attention of Rome. Now, again, I'm right there with people who say, but Rome should be more active and go out and dismiss some of these other priests from the clerical state, even if their superior isn't bringing it to their attention. I'm right there with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's some fair criticism there. While media reaction has largely focused on Pavone's pro-life and partisan political activities, the dicastery judged that he had engaged in blasphemous communication on social media and of persistent disobedience of lawful instruction from his diocesan bishop. It is not clear which of Pavone's communications were judged as blasphemous. Well, I think we can we can have a really good idea which social communications that would be in light of what we've seen. Some have pointed to the incident in which the priest placed the body of an aborted child on the table, resembling an altar, which he celebrated mass. Some theologians at the time condemned as violation of the child's dignity and abuse of what appeared to be an altar, and others on social media have claimed all kinds of things like, well, these babies are martyrs and these are relics. And I'll just simply note that I am not aware anywhere of where the church claims that these babies are martyrs. Now, you do have some instances where you have infants who are martyred for the name of Christ, whose relics we could venerate. But unfortunately, not every baby that is aborted for the sake of Christ. So they wouldn't qualify, unfortunately, for martyrdom insofar as from what I've seen. So I don't think that that's a proper rejoinder. Okay. Others, including Pavone himself, have pointed to tweets in which the priest decried GD baby-killing politicians. I won't read that to you. In the end, neither of these incidents, separately or together, would likely have Pavone laicized. And I agree. I don't think any one of these incidents in and of themselves, would be grounds for dismissal. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that there should be some discipline for these individual things, but not just one of these individual things. Okay, that's it. You're laicized. I agree that that's unreasonable. But neither of those incidents, separately or together, would likely have seen Pavone's laicized. Special faculty cases are almost always judged on the response of clerics to the correction of their bishop after an incident, even a serious one, and not the incident itself. Let's stop there. It's saying these incidents are not really enough to necessarily laicize a person. That's unlikely. It's probably going to be more the reaction and response that the priest gives whenever he is reprimanded. And from what we have seen so far from Mr. Pavone, confirms the idea that he is not willing to submit to lawful authority. That is most likely what got him laicized. The thing that we're seeing him doing right now did not come from nowhere. I imagine his bishop has already been dealing with that. Sources close to his case have told the Pillar that the Pavone case had less to do with his media profile and public statements and more to do with his persistent disobedience to his bishop. That's not far-fetched in light of his reaction. In short, again, I want to say, if you're obedient and you're a loyal son to the church, call your bishop and ask, are you in good standing? The fact that he has not done that tells you everything you need to know. And if he has done that, perhaps he can disclose that conversation to us. Did his bishop say that he's in good standing? What did his bishop say? In short, it seems likely that Zurek cited Pavone's refusal to accept an assignment, his conflicts with Zurek over financial questions involving priests for life, and whatever Pavone had been directed to do regarding social media as evidence of a pattern of disobedience that had become intractable. The dicastery seemingly agreed with that view. In the statement sent to the U.S. bishops, the dicastery noted that Pavone had multiple opportunities to submit himself to the authority of his diocesan bishop, but he did not choose to do so. In short, the Holy See's process indicated that it was Pavone's persistent disobedience, including his refusal to return to his home diocese and conform to his bishop's instructions, which led to his laicization. You could imagine if you were a bishop and one of your priests is not in the diocese and you're saying, I need you to come and take this parish, and they're not listening to the instructions and they're being disobedient, which again is not far-fetched based on his reactions. You can imagine after a while the bishop is going to say, all right, I've done everything I can. I'm taking this to Rome. You can criticize his bishop all you want. You can say he's part of the DNC and promotes the DNC all you want. Those might be legitimate grievances against that bishop, but that has nothing to do with being obedient to your bishop. Why was Pavone laicized and not some abusers? Why not Father Heretic? The article asks. Some Catholics have asked whether Pavone's case was prioritized over others, including cases of clerical sexual abuse. But because cases involving sexual abuse are ordinarily handled by a different dicastery, they are treated by entirely different processes and teams of staff. Those processes are not beyond criticism. And I agree. And Pavone's laicization comes at the same time that the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith has come under heavy criticism for its handling of sexual abuse allegations against Father Rupnik. So a different dicastery has recently come under heavy criticisms for its decision on Rupnik. The apparent disparity in handling of Pavone's case and Rupnik has led to frustration for many Catholics, which I've been seeing a lot of online. Let's see. But it is worth noting that the cases were handled by different Vatican departments along different timelines. Other Catholics have asked why Pavone was laicized, while other priests who reject and defy Catholic doctrine have not faced penal discipline. It says, it's a fair question, and it points to questions about the willingness of bishops and religious superiors to apply canon law to problematic situations. I agree. I do think that other bishops and superiors should be bringing up more issues to the attention of Rome and should be engaging in more discipline. I think that that's a fair criticism. But just because Bishop so-and-so isn't doing his job doesn't mean that a different bishop can't discipline one of his own priests. And just because one dicastery isn't doing a good job doesn't mean another dicastery can't do its own job. They are two different things. At the end of the day, might we offer some gentle and charitable criticism to the Holy Father and say, hey, Holy Father, it seems that there's some problems here with the dicastery. Might want to look more into that. Get some more consistency here. But while the church's handling of other priests with public ministries is fair fodder for criticism, those cases don't tie directly into the question of whether Pavone himself was treated with procedural and substantive justice in a process envisioned by canon law and initiated by his own bishop. Can Pavone appeal? No. As the letter from the nuncio to the U.S. bishops made clear, Pavone's laicization is a supreme decision admitting of no possibility of appeal. Now, what Pavone wants to say is, well, yeah, I can still appeal. I can continue to ask Pope Francis, or I can wait for his successor, or I can appeal to the laity. You can't appeal to the laity. That's not going to work. This isn't a democracy, and we're not Protestants. But sure, yeah, he could ask another pope or continue to ask Pope Francis. Sure. But do so being obedient in the process. Don't continue to present yourself as a priest. Be obedient. If one were to do that, it's much more likely that the Pope would reverse it. However, if they become obstinate and say, nope, I'm going to dismiss this and I am going to continue to present myself as a priest, what are the odds that Pope Francis would reverse this or another Pope would reverse this? And again, appealing to the laity isn't going to do anything because the laity can't reinstate people because faculties don't come from the laity. So I don't know why an appeal to the laity would even matter. We're not Protestants. faculties come from a bishop. No. As the letter again from the nuncio makes clear, supreme decision admitting of no possibility of appeal, because every special faculty's laicization is presented to the Pope for his personal authorization. It is a legal act of the Pope. Now, again, it goes on to say Pavone says he was not notified of his laicization, while bishops were informed December 16th. Is that possible? At the conclusion of a special faculties process, and after the priest has had opportunity to make a final defense, the dicastery issues a final decree relating the supreme decision in the case. That decree is sent to the man's diocese of incarnation, and he is requested by a formal letter to present himself at the diocesan chancery in order for the decision to be communicated to him. Did you hear that? He is requested by a formal letter to present himself to the diocesan chancery in order for the decision to be communicated to him. Father Pavone, have you presented yourself to your bishop? Have you asked him, have I been laicized? Have you presented yourself to your bishop so that he can communicate this decision to you? You say that you have not received communication on this, but you are to present yourself to the chancery. Have you done that? Please let us, as the faithful, know. Give us full disclosure. Have you presented yourself to the bishop? It is possible that Pavone was not yet formally notified of the church's final decision if he was summoned to the Amarillo chancery and did not present himself or did not otherwise respond to an issued summons. And I would add to that, or didn't pick up a cell phone and call his bishop. Or it is possible that the summons wasn't sent to Pavone, although most dioceses send such messages by registered mail in order to complete the process. While many chanceries send by registered letter a copy of the final decision if a priest does not present himself at the chancery, the Diocese of Amarillo has not responded to questions about Pavone's laicization process, which I think they need to do. Diocese of Amarillo, are you contacting him? I think that you should also reach out. I'm not saying that they haven't, but it would be nice to let us know. Have you reached out? If so, when? Where are we at in this process? It'd be nice to know. I don't think that the diocese is obligated to inform us. I think the obligation is on Pavone to contact his chancery and his bishop. But it is not an obligation of the diocese to inform us, but I do think the diocese needs to. Again, they're not obligated, but it would really help clear the air. So, Diocese of Amarillo, if you're listening, please get the memo to the bishop. You need to make a statement. What has Pavone said? On December 17th, shortly after the news of his laicization broke, Pavone said on Twitter that in every profession, including the priesthood, if you defend the unborn, you will be treated like them. The only difference is that when we are aborted, we continue to speak loud and clear. Well, I mean, Mr. Pavone, is it your position that Pope Francis has aborted you? Is that, this came from the supreme authority in the church. Is that the position we're going to take? And if that is the position, how should one respond? As a Martin Luther, as a Lefebvre, or as a Padre Pio? Later that evening, the priest live-streamed a long video in which he said that the charge of blasphemy followed an occasion in which he got really angry at this one guy. It goes on to quote him, got really angry at this one guy. It was about 1.5 years ago. This was bad. It was bad, end quote. This guy, another quote, was a real rabid Biden supporter and criticized me, end quote. Pavone said, adding that he responded to his interlocutor by criticizing him, unquote, you and these GD baby killing politicians, end quote. Another quote, I shouldn't have said that. I usually don't, Pavone said at that moment. I was very angry. Sorry. So I went to confession. Sorry. And I just say, wonderful. I'm so happy he went to confession. Great. That doesn't take away from temporal punishment and consequences that come along with this, canonical penalties. As we all know. But Pavone said one of the bishops who had made it a point to show his animosity toward me had turned it into Father is doing blasphemous comments on social media. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't have any axe to grind with Pavone. I appreciate his pro-life efforts. And I look at those comments on social media and I say that's blasphemy. I agree with the bishop there. So I don't think it's because of any kind of animosity towards his pro-life stance. Let's see here. In the December 17th video, Pavone appeared in a clerical shirt under a leather biker jacket and despite his laicization. Pavone, his social media account continued to identify him as father and Catholic priest. So he's continuing to present himself as priest in disobedience to the church. What happens next? The priest canceled a scheduled live stream on December 19th, but Pavone's public statement and his continued use of clerical dress and the title Father suggests that he does not accept the Vatican's decision. Unfortunately, if he continues to present himself as a cleric, here's the big part. Pavone could face new admonitions and warnings from the Diocese of Orlando, Florida, where Pavone lives and where Priest for Life has its headquarters. Again, he's not in Texas where his bishop is. He's in Florida, and he could be admonished and subject to further action by continuing the direction that he has chosen to go down. Should Pavone ignore those warnings, which he has done so far, he could face new ecclesiastical penalties, including the possibility of excommunication. So that is in the cards. On the other hand, the Vatican's decision to laicize Pavone is not believed to have affected his role as board chairman and director of Priests for Life. In its statement to U.S. bishops, the Dicastery for Clergy noted that since Priests for Life is not a Catholic organization, Mr. Pavone's continuing role in that as a layperson would be entirely up to the leadership of that organization. On December 19th, he tweeted, quote, "My board, pastoral team, and staff are 1,000% united with me in moving forward with our work. We will not slow down. My vocation is to be a priest and a pro-life leader, and I will not walk away from either one of those," end quote. Well, unfortunately, if one is not accepting priestly assignments and they're not obeying their bishop, and they've been laicized and they're not accepting that, then they are walking away from the priesthood, whether they call it that or not. That's what they're doing. So it's unfortunate because he has chosen to go down this path, the path of dissent. Hopefully he does an about face before it turns into excommunication. The page listing the board members of Priests for Life returns an error message at Priests for Life website, but a version of the page archived in June lists 1 priest and 7 laypersons as board members of the organization. Pavone has also received a number of public expressions of support from political commentators and online Catholic activists, and from Catholics who say Pavone's laicization was political. Well, it's that, or it's the more obvious reasons, the ones that we've seen. One of the two. Most notably, the Bishop of Tyler, Texas, publicly took issue with the Vatican's rulings, and so it goes over the whole comments by Strickland. Whole lot that could be said there, but he's obviously not in favor of the laicization. For their parts, neither the Diocese of Amarillo, where Pavone was incarnated, nor the Diocese of Orlando, where he resides, have released official statements regarding Pavone, and I continue to say they're not obligated to, but they should. They should. Because there's a lot of wild speculation going on, and I do think that the diocese could put an end to that by giving a little bit more information. Again, I don't think it's the obligation of the diocese to do that. The ultimate obligation here is on Father Pavone's part, or Mr. Pavone's part, to contact his bishop and say, hey, what's going on? I've heard all kinds of news from the nuncio. What's going on here? That's where the obligation is. But again, perhaps he can clarify for us if he's done that, and please disclose to us what happened with that conversation and what the bishop said, and why is it that you're just now telling us whenever we have to ask these questions? Why didn't you tell us that to begin with? I don't know if this conversation never took place, however. I suspect it probably hasn't, because I suspect if he's picked up the phone and called his bishop, I think he knows what the answer would be. So he's waiting in this limbo phase where, well, technically I haven't been sent a letter yet. That's not going to slide. And I kind of wonder, if Father Martin receives one of these decisions from the dicastery and he says, well, technically I haven't been informed yet. I wonder if that's going to slide with most Catholics out there. Probably not. Okay. All right. Well, I hope this has been helpful. We're right at an hour, so I'll go ahead and end it there. Again, I'm hoping that he can give us a little bit more information and that he's going to do an about face here, that he's going to humbly submit to the church as a loyal son of the church, as a Padre Pio, and who knows, the case might get overturned. Unfortunately, if this doesn't happen, I think it's going to go in the opposite direction, and eventually excommunication will probably be in the cards. And I don't think he can blame anyone except himself if that is what happens. So hopefully he is going to do the right thing. We'll see. All right. If y'all have enjoyed this, hit the like button and the subscribe button. Share this with people on social media who need to hear this message and are confused. And also, if you want to support me in what I'm doing here, patreon.com/reason and theology. See you later, y'all. God bless. Oh, wait, before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting this channel. This is my primary means to provide for my family, and it also helps me to produce content like this video. If you would like to support me, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/reason and theology. You'll also get access to extra exclusive content when you become a patron. Lastly, hit that like button and the subscribe button, and be sure to leave a comment down below. God bless.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home, office, or any kind of property anywhere in the world, you're going to want to call Real Estate for Life, and they're going to connect you with a Catholic agent. Now, that agent will donate a portion of their commission upon sale, and Real Estate for Life will donate 75% of that gift to a pro-life organization at no cost to you. Call Real Estate for Life at 1-877-LIFE-US1 or text them 248-431-1440. If you care about the pro-life cause, call them now.
Hey RNC fans, just a quick word about one of our sponsors, Verbum. It's an excellent Bible and theological software. Simply go to verbum.com/reason, where you can get 10% off any of the packages that you choose, along with 5 extra books, and you'll be supporting us here at Reason and Theology. God bless. Are you confused about how Catholic teaching authority works? With encyclicals, papal bulls, councils, and many other things, it's easy to get confused on what is authoritative and what is not. Fortunately, at MaximusInstitute.com, I have prepared a course explaining the magisterium from A to Z. Visit the website and check out the course Understanding the Magisterium for more information.